Hello, BookTube. It's another change of location and another change of equipment in my ongoing quest to make videos that are audible and visible, and also maybe a little bit controlled, as opposed to the bookish video that I made earlier today, in which the background noise here, my infamous background noise, reached a point where at minute 8, I realized that I was screaming at the camera. That I was taking a breath not between words, but between individual syllables in order to scream them out. I turned off the video, took the bean for a nice long walk, recovered myself, and then decided to just change everything and see. So I'll be curious to know, once again from you, what the audio is like here, what the video is like. I'm hoping that the background noise is at a minimum. And we'll just see. We'll just see what continues. A variant of this filming location worked just fine for me for hundreds and hundreds of videos, but we shall see. Feel free to email me on the subject. Feel free to leave a comment down below, and also feel free to email me about any subject at all. I leave my email on every video. That's not a dummy email. That's not a merch store or anything like that. It's an email to my inbox, and I love hearing from you all. Absolutely do. I work at home. I write on my couch all day long, and although that keeps me busy, it also gives me intervals where I'm happy for a break. Just allow for the fact that I get hundreds of emails a day, not junk. God knows what the number would be if I included junk. I get hundreds of emails a day that need action of some kind, and in addition to that, you want to bear in mind we're talking about a friendly email here. If you send me work, if you send me an email that's 6,000 words long, or you send me an email that's 100 words long and has a 6,000 word attachment that you want me to read, analyze, and report back on, don't expect to hear back from me, especially not quickly. But a quick discussional email about frustrations with your parents, or worries about your school, or a problem with your health, or an irritation with your friends, or bookish stuff like reading, anything like that, I'm perfectly happy to hear that. There are quite a few of you. There are quite a few of you who, in your emails, refer to me as Grandpa Donoghue, and just want a slightly older, only slightly, 28 years old is not that old, a slightly older viewpoint to just bounce things off, whether you have an abundance of those viewpoints in your life or not. I am honored to serve that purpose. So feel free to email me on any subject, and if you want to email me about the audio and visual quality of this email, I'd be happy to hear it. I already put enough of a burden on you people as it is, making 50 videos a day. I don't want them to be hard to watch or listen to. So here's hoping that this innovation works a little bit better. Unfortunately, the video where I ended up screaming at the camera in order to overcome the background noise was a mail haul. And you can't redo a mail haul. So I have some things I want to show you, some stuff that I want to show you. No package openings. We'll just have to hope for better as the week winds down. The first thing, we have some periodicals to go through. Number one is a New Yorker with a Peter Seve cover. His covers are a joy. They have been for years. It's a special occasion when he has one. This is called Local Fauna. It is a stereotypical site for those of you who have ever been to New York City. The dog walking hour in the morning and in the evening will have, or especially in the middle afternoon when professionals used to be at work, this used to be a very common sight. Not someone walking a horse and a parrot with goldfish in a bowl on the back and a gecko and a very nervous dog who's right next to a giant crocodile. It's not that. But in Midtown Manhattan in the middle of the day, before the pandemic, when everyone was at work, it was a very common sight to see dog walkers, professional dog walkers, with a big crowd of dogs all around them on multiple leashes. And that's an excellent detail, the ring of keys, to get them into these various brownstones and condos, and to their care, to their charges. Always wonderful to encounter them. They ordinarily have, as accurately as depicted here, a kind of brusque, business-like attitude, because their main goal is to take good care of their charges. So they really don't want you to stop and coo and fuss with the pets. They really don't want that to happen. They want to cut down on the number of X factors down to zero if they can. And back when I used to go to New York all the time, I ignored that. I respect these people. They make a good living. Some of them do. They are dedicated professionals. But I don't give two hoots. If you're walking 10 dogs down the street in Manhattan, I am going to stop and I'm going to squat down to their eye level and I'm going to invite them to coo all over me. We are going to be a big, undifferentiated mass of happy canine. And if you don't like that, well, you can stew in your primate juices for the 5 minutes it's going to take me to greet all of the babies, and they're going to be happier for it. But one way or another, a delightful, delightful cover. I don't think there's a single cover by this artist that I have not cut out and saved in that year's journal, in whatever journal that I'm writing in, and I will certainly do it with this one. And this had a couple of points of interest. It's a good issue, as always, a little bit light on the books, but it had a couple of letters that I want to read you about an article that occurred in an earlier issue about robo-pets. There is, as New Yorker will often tell you, and as you can read elsewhere in the news, an epidemic of loneliness. And this was true before the pandemic, and as the pandemic has actually, ironically, only made it worse. There's a pandemic of loneliness, especially among the elderly, who are parked in fixed income housing and never visited, never stimulated. Most of the institutions, the buildings, the places where these people live, and where quite a few of them are bound, they can't really go out and about. Almost none of those places have what you would call a robust plan of activities to keep their residents engaged and interested. Almost none of them have a robust plan like that. And oh my, the number of these people who are ever visited by their own relatives is shockingly small. Shockingly small. I knew that from statistics anyway. And then me sainted ma, years ago, moved into a place like this. Very nice managed care building. Where the supervisor everybody has medical alerts in their bathrooms, and the supervisor knows where everybody is and knows their various health conditions. And me sainted ma was known in her building for having a nonstop flow of people in and out. Relatives, old friends, old cronies from school, the ones that were still alive, all kinds of people in and out all the time. So that there was traffic in the hallways, so that people would meet in the elevators. And she was known in her building because she was literally, in a building of 110 people, the only person there who had anything like that. An afternoon when she did not have a visit was so noteworthy that we never heard the end of it. And that was not true with the other people in her building. Not true at all. I didn't make it out there very often. I don't drive. I called me sainted ma every day, every single day for 20 minutes we talked. It was an unbelievable gift, a gift beyond price, to be able to call up and talk for 20 minutes with my best friend, who knew me literally better than anyone. It took a long time to reach that point, and once I realized that we were at that point, I indulged in it. 20 minutes every day. It's my favorite decaying Boston landmark. But the few times that I did go to this managed care building to visit her in person, I noticed a heartbreaking sight, which is that some of the people in the other apartments on her hall would open their doors and peek their heads out just a bit to see, just to look at visitors and maybe say hi. They didn't have any visitors of their own, hadn't had any visitors in a year, but they just wanted to see somebody else's visitors. Heartbreaking. I often wanted to invite them in, but time like that is precious with the one you're visiting. You don't want to dilute it especially if me sainted ma didn't want the company. She saw enough of these people as it was. But one way or another, the article that these two letters I want to read you are referring to is kind of a weird solution to the loneliness epidemic, which is robo-pets. Little robotic pets that are designed to respond to human owners with something that simulates affection and also with memory, to remember things about them. And the article is all about how the seniors that were given these robo-pets knew perfectly well that they weren't living creatures, but still managed to develop affection for them. And that it did help with their loneliness. And I want to read you, the whole letters page is devoted to that article, but I want to read you a couple of letters that stress a couple of things. The first one is from a reader in East Dummerston, She is the president of Sharing Housing Incorporated, and she has a proposal to put forward, as you would guess from the title of that institution. Katie Engelhardt, in her article on robotic aids for homebound elderly people, describes how pet-like robots, which communicate with their owners and are designed to get to know them using machine learning, are alleviating feelings of loneliness. Mechanical cats and dogs are certainly a sensible innovation during the loneliness epidemic, which has become a costly catastrophe. But while it's clear that robot pets can provide some level of comfort, the commercial interests that stand to profit from AI pets may divert attention from solutions that are more humane, if more complex to implement. Because keep in mind, someone is paying attention to every bit of data that any device, anywhere around you or anybody else, is collecting. And the devices around you are collecting data. Very much so. The camera on which I'm recording this video is recording data that I don't want it to record. Pretty much the only device in this room that isn't is that lamp. We should not overlook less techie remedies for loneliness, which include sharing one's housing with other people. There are millions of spare bedrooms in the United States, many of them in the homes of seniors who live alone. In the midst of an affordable housing crisis, helping seniors find housemates who can offer companionship in exchange for reduced rent is a win-win proposition. The comfort that robots offer is only a stopgap. As Engelhardt's article makes clear, even elderly people with robotic pets long for real human connection. That reminded me of an incident decades and decades ago with Miss Saint-Edma, where she was at the time living in the gigantic house, just 16 rooms, something like that, all by herself. This thing had a 19th century boiler in the basement. The basement stairs were rickety and narrow. There were 2 furnished floors above the first floor. And we were talking on the phone. At the time, I wasn't living in Massachusetts, and we were talking about her taking in a boarder to help with the rent. And she was saying, I don't know who this person would be. What if I don't like them? What if they slit my throat in the night? I'd wake up dead. And I was saying to her, yeah, Ma, we'd all worry if you took in a stranger. I mean, you have 5 different annuities. You don't need to alleviate, the mortgage payment. She'd say, oh, every little bit helps. And then it suddenly occurred to me that I could be that lodger. And I did. And we had a wonderful time. We had a blast. But I know that this is true. There are plenty of people who have spare rooms. It would be a complicated remedy to effect, but it is a good idea. And certainly preferable to robo-pets, despite, as the next letter points out here, this next letter is from Toronto. Engelhardt's article is informative and often moving, but it doesn't mention an even more rewarding source of companionship for the elderly: real cats. Having a cat may take more effort than a robot. Someone has to provide food and water and empty a litter box, but affection between 2 congenial living creatures can, of course, generate real joy. To which I would say that's absolutely true, but if you're going to own a cat, you're 1 congenial living creature short of having 2 congenial living creatures. If you want a living creature, the elderly in America are already suffering from an epidemic of being ignored by their loved ones. You're gonna import a loved one who will ignore you on command? I don't think so. But the other thing that was of interest in this issue was, believe it or not, the fiction. For a number of different reasons. Ordinarily, I don't think much of the fiction in the New Yorker. Ordinarily, it strikes me as gimmicky and very virtue signally lately. But this one is the coast of New Zealand, and it's about a small group of graduates of library school who make a pact to meet once a year at the same restaurant and not to communicate in the meantime. To just have their meeting and catch up then. And the story follows as that routine breaks apart and also charts the breaking apart of their various lives. And I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And even more surprising than loving a short story in the New Yorker is that it was by Cynthia Ozick, whose fiction usually doesn't do anything for me at all. So that was a double extra surprise. The book's cover is not so much in this issue, but that's okay. It can't always be. And then the other periodicals that I want to show you are science fiction. Squarebound science fiction digest magazines of the type that I love. There are 3. The 3 biggest in the United States today are the Magazine of Science Fiction and Fantasy, and then Analog and Asimov. And they came up on this channel recently, not only because some booktubers are buying loads and loads. You can get these things in big lot numbers on eBay and other sites like that. Some booktubers have been indulging in that. It's been wonderful to watch. And also, it came up because I am part of a multi-booktuber event in November called New Worlds November, in which we celebrate science fiction. And in November 2021, we are celebrating science fiction short stories, what I consider to be the heart and soul of the genre. And that's going to be a lot of fun on its own. I've already decided that my focus for nonfiction, for New Worlds November, and Nonfiction November is another event in November, and so is NaNoWriMo. Your calendar is going to be full because you don't have the option to opt out of any of these. Okay? But for New Worlds November, I've already decided that the thing that I want to do is look back at 2021 in these square-bound periodicals. Just do a bunch of videos where I talk about the stories and the nonfiction pieces in these articles. So I'm paying extra close attention to them, and I would be anyway, because my subscription to Analog and Asimov went astray. I sent them checky poos, and they cached their checky poos, and I got one issue out of each of them, and then they just stopped. So I've had to have my surly houseboy go to the newsstand and get me these issues, so that I don't miss them. I wouldn't want to miss them anyway, even if it weren't for New Worlds November. The one that I got recently was this Fantasy and Science Fiction magazine, and this was a little disappointing as an issue. There was one story in here by Rich Larson called The World a Carcass that was pretty good, and there was a story in here called Severed Fruit by an author working under the obvious pen name of Pan Morgan that was really good. But those were 2 out of 10, 12 short stories, and the others weren't that memorable. It was 2 that were really worth the price of admission here, and this thing was $10. Still a steal for all the original stuff you're getting. You don't know. It's a crapshoot. It's spinning a wheel. You don't know the ratio is going to be like it was this time. Sometimes you'll be paying $10 for 10 great stories. That's a bargain. But this time around, no. This time around, there were 2 stories that were good, and of the others, 2 or 3 weren't just average or forgettable. They were bad. They had just cliches choking up every paragraph, and one, I'm not going to pick on the person, but one noticeably bad, where not only was the writing lazy and no editor bothered to step in and say, look, you can't just say, right as rain or things like that. You can't just toss off pre-made lazy cliches like that in every paragraph. This is poor writing. Your writing isn't good if you use those cliches well. There is no good way to use those cliches. The point is to write effectively, energetically, without them. So this time around, this was a little bit disappointing. There was one good story and one story that was slightly above average. But I have more swings at the bat because my surly houseboy came through today with 2 of the other new releases on the market. We have Analog. In this case, they are not giving a rundown of the stories. Here you see the rundown of the stories. You have one by Marie Vibert above the banner, and then a bunch of stories and authors highlighted elsewhere. On the cover of the new Analog, it's just Marie Vibert, who also has a story in this, and they're not highlighting any other issues. So we shall see. We shall see. I was looking through the table of contents, and I recognize virtually none of the authors in here. Virtually none of them. Rosemary Claire Smith, C. Stewart Hardwick, Joe McDermott, Leonard Richardson, Brenda Kalt, Tom Jolly. I recognize barely any of these people, and that's good. That's a good thing. That will mean I won't be coming to them with any kind of predispositions, and I'll probably enjoy quite a bit. We shall see. Now that I'm done with fantasy and science fiction, these 2 will be on my agenda next. And then the next one is Asimov, and that is it's this one. I don't think this has a Marie Vibert story, and this one does have the long list of contributors, including the headlining thing. What is this called? The Prisoner's Cinema by Gregory Norman Bossert. Michael Swanwick and Bruce Sterling and Christine Catherine Rush take second billing to this person whose name I do not know. I've never heard of it before. And this table of contents likewise is full of names that I've never heard of before. Uh, so we shall see. There is. I don't think it's in this one. No, it's not in Asimov's. It's in Analog. Uh, in Analog, there's an article that I really want to get to. In fact, I might read it first before I read anything else. Let's see here. Yes, there's an article in here in Analog by Richard Lovett called "Return to the Golden Age: Why Venus Might Actually Once Have Been Habitable." I eat up articles like that. Absolutely eat them up. I don't think there's any question that Venus was once habitable. It's got virtually the same density as Earth. It's virtually the same size as Earth. It is obvious to me that Venus is an Earth might have been. That all sorts of climatological problems happened on Venus that could easily happen on Earth. It's just on Venus they did. I'd be willing to bet that once upon a time, maybe a billion years ago, Venus was a lush, green, blue-skied, habitable world with running, standing water. I think the surface of Venus now is a nightmare hellscape. So I'm not sure that anything like fossils survives on Venus. I don't know. I'm not sure that fossilization is a process that can even happen on Venus. So I'm not sure that there would be any remnant left. Anyway, suppose you had a fully outfitted scientific team on the surface of Venus. That would be very hard to do. Hot enough to melt lead. It would be very hard to do. But suppose you could do it. I'm not sure that team, with the best equipment that we have, could determine whether or not Venus was habitable. If Venus was a blue-skied, clear-watered planet, an Earth-like planet a billion years ago, then almost certainly it was seeded with organic life of some kind or other. I'm not sure that any trace of that would be available on Venus, even to the finest scientific equipment that we have. One way or another, can't wait to read the article. Can't wait. Before I read the fiction, I might do that because I know it won't disappoint. And then we're going to do the books that arrived in the Screaming video. And I'm just going to hope that this video works better. I'm going to hope that this has little to no background noise, that the video quality is good, the audio quality is good. I'm just going to hope for that. So the first one we have is science fiction. We'll go from science fiction magazines to a science fiction book. This comes out in September, and it's called The Actual Star by Monica Byrne, who did a book called The Girl in the Road that I did not read because of its title. And I'm wondering if any of you did. I'm not going to read the girl books, but I'm perfectly willing to admit that I might miss some good books because of that. So was the girl, if you read The Girl in the Road, was it good? But anyway, this is, let's see here, science fiction novel. I did get a pub sheet. There are more and more pub sheets with books these days. That's wonderful to see. And science fiction too, which I don't always get. This is a multi-generational saga spanning 2 millennia, from the collapse of the ancient Maya to a far future utopia on the brink of civil war, telling 3 powerful tales, all of them converging in the same cave in a Belize jungle. Braided together are the stories of a pair of teenage twins who ascend the throne of a Maya kingdom, a young woman on the trip of self-discovery in Belize, and 2 dangerous charismatics vying for the leadership of a new religion and racing toward a confrontation that will determine the fate of the few humans left on Earth after massive climate change. In each era, a reincarnated trinity of souls navigates the entanglements of tradition and progress, sister and stranger, and love and hate, until all of their age-old questions about the nature of existence converge deep underground, where only in complete darkness can they truly see. Past, present, and future, gender identity, science versus religion, these are constructs we take for granted, but what do they actually mean? So we shall see. This comes out as a hardcover, I believe. It comes out in mid-September. Is this going to be a hardcover? Yes. Yeah, this is going to be a hardcover. So Monica Byrne grew up in Pennsylvania as the youngest child of 2 theologians. She studied biochemistry at Wellesley, NASA, and MIT before pivoting to fiction and theater. And she wrote The Girl in the Road, which I guess had some renown. So I'm curious to know if any of you have read this. I will certainly be interested in seeing it. There's a brief note. I'm not going to read it until September, probably. There's a brief note in that pub sheet that worries me. Of course, this is science fiction. It's not fantasy. It's not magic. It's science fiction. There's no such thing as reincarnation. So a science fiction novel that takes reincarnation seriously, written by someone who's raised by two theologians, starts to worry me. There's no such thing as reincarnation. And the reason I say that is because you can't prove it to me. You can't demonstrate it. You can't show it to me in a lab manned by atheists or robots. AI lab assistants that you cannot convince with your passion, that you cannot sway with stories about how your grandmother is so much like her great-great-grandmother. AI assistants will say this thing does not exist because you cannot prove it. You cannot demonstrate it. You cannot show it. You cannot reproduce it. And so it doesn't exist. That's the same yardstick that we use for anything else. For anything else, if I make some outlandish claim that the moon is made of taffy, I have to be able to prove it to you. If I can't prove it to you, then I am wrong. It's not if I can't prove it to you, then there's still a chance the moon is made of taffy. No, it's that if I can't prove it to you with techniques and tools that would prove it if it could be proven, then it can't be proven because it isn't real. So a science fiction novel that takes reincarnation seriously is going to have to go away, probably into the quantum realm. We shall see. I will report back when the time comes, but it's intriguing anyway. It looks like a big, ambitious science fiction novel, and those are always fun. Especially if it's a standalone novel. Good Lord, those are manna from heaven. They almost never occur. Then the next book, the other book to finish up here, is one that I have read. I loved it. I am strongly recommending it to a certain demographic that's listening to me right now. This is by Chloe Shaw, and it is called What is a Dog? And it has a blurb by John Irving. Who knew that John Irving was still alive? In which he says that if you've loved dogs, you have to read this book. I agree with that. There are no shortage of dog books in any given publishing season. This is going to be one of the best ones of the year. It is beautifully written, and it's a gut punch. It really is. The author of one of the family dogs dies, and the death hits her really hard. Well, actually, let me read you here. Chloe Shaw is in a doghouse of her own choosing. A married mother with kids, the death of Booker, her children's eldest dog. Keep in mind, that is a mistake. Much as I love the book, that is a mistake. And married mother with kids, the death of Booker. The death of Booker is not a married mother with kids. That's just a dangling participle. That's all. But anyway, her children's eldest dog has left her reckoning with her lifelong relationship with canines. And when she finally asks her family for some time alone to process the loss, she's surprised to find the dogs of her past pawing at her every memory and running, sticks in mouth, back into her life. What follows is a meditation on one woman's life through the dogs she's loved and lost. Since she was a child, Shaw learned to escape the hardest parts of being human by immersing herself in the lives of her canine companions, an adaptive attachment that carried her to adulthood. But her ways of, quote, being the dog in times of hardship proved destructive, and it's not until she's able to love herself and learn from dogs past and present that she can truly find peace. I myself think that humans could do with a lot less learning how to love themselves, but in one way or another, I loved this book. Just loved it. Thought it was fantastic. I want to rush out and recommend it to every dog person I know, because every dog person I know will be in something like this same position, right? No matter how many dogs you've had in your life, and no matter how different they've each been personality-wise, they share one thing in common. For whatever else they may be different, they all died. Dogs die. They live for 13 years, 14 years, 15 years. In my case, in one wonderful, wonderful instance, 23 years. And then they die. You are going to outlive your dogs. And if you are a dog owner of any number of winters, you will have outlived quite a few of them already. They have that in common. They are a company of dead people, of dead friends that you've known. And that's amazing. That creates a layer here, a layer of unwanted commonality that really brings a lot of these reflections to life. This is just an amazing book. A slim thing, but an essential thing for any dog owner, for any dog person. So I wanted to make sure that you saw this. I didn't want you to see it with me screaming at the camera. You should reserve this at your library. You should pre-order this. It's a $25 hardcover. It's a pretty thing. And I think this comes out, I don't have a pub sheet with this, so I'm pretty sure this is a July release. But there's no doubt here. Ordinarily, I don't proselytize for hardcovers because they're so sinfully expensive, but there's no doubt here that if you are the demographic of this book, you're going to want a copy of it. you're going to reread it. Probably you know the times when you're going to reread it. I hate to bring it up, but nevertheless, it's true. I am in a blessed point right now. I have a dog in the bloom of her youth, in the prime of her life, with no health problems whatsoever and lots of attitude. But I know that won't last forever. You all know this if you've watched this channel from the beginning. When this channel started, I had 2 dogs who were old, very old, white-faced, slow, weak, easily frightened. And in the course of having this channel, those dogs went from old to sick and then dying. And that wasn't their permanent state at all. It felt like 2 minutes since they were the same way as Frida is now, full of life and energy, always getting into trouble, zipping all over the place. Then it felt like 2 minutes, and they were suddenly the sweet old white-faced things that you see in some of my earliest videos. So I'm not under any illusions, and most dog people I know aren't. This is a necessary book for you, hardcover or no, at least to reserve from your library. But if you've got a loyalty card membership at a retail bookstore, or if you know a retail remainder outlet that's quick on the uptake for these sorts of things, set about it now, because you're going to want to read this book. It's fantastically done. So there you go. Much better than shouting at the camera. Here you've got a congenial background, hopefully good visual and good audio, and no background noise. Wonderful. So we have The Actual Star by Monica Byrne and What is a Dog by Chloe Shaw. Those are the books. And then we have Periodicals, the trio of science fiction square-bound digest magazines for July/August. This is the trio that is going to be on your newsstand for July/August. And then what is this? The June 21st issue of the New Yorker with a classic cover, an instant classic. This guy can do no wrong. Just Google his name. His name is Peter, and then the last name is Seve. DE space Seve. If you just Google his name for a Google image search, you will come up with a great gallery of classic New Yorker covers. Just fantastic. I wish there were a big book. Probably there is, and I just don't know about it. But anyway, there you go. So periodicals and books, a nice, quiet, peaceful visit. Wonderful. So I'm going to wrap this up and hope that it uploads. That's the only X factor left. Will it upload? But then I will see you tomorrow. Thank you, BookTube.